Good evening, and welcome to the September 2021 International Game Developers Association Twin Cities Chapter Gamedev meeting. I am Beth Korth, the current chair of IGDATC and your host for tonight. Thank you all for coming, and I want to say that I think you are in for quite the treat tonight. We have two amazing presentations. First up is Star with lessons from graphic design that helped me be a better game developer. And then following her presentation will be Ashlye, opening your own door to the industry. What we'll do is while they are doing their presentations, while Star's talking, I will kind of collect your questions that you might have for her after, and we'll do a little Q&A session when she's done with her presentation. And then we'll take a short break before Ashlye comes on, and then we'll do the same kind of thing with her. I'll try and collect the questions for after she's done, and then we'll have a little discussion, do our little post-meeting close-up, and we'll hang out in the Discord, either the Minneapolis or St. Paul room, and just do our little post-meeting chats there. So our IGDATC meetings are open and inclusive for everybody, so we want everyone to feel welcome and safe. If you have any questions or concerns during the meeting or after, etc., you can contact us and let us know. We do have a safe event policy that you can find on our website. And please feel free to hang out in the voice chat during the stream if you want. We won't be in there or anything like that, but if you guys want to chat while we're setting up or changing speakers or anything like that, whatever makes the community happy. So we are run by an all-volunteer board. This is our current board. We're always looking for more volunteers to help. We're especially considering expanding the board at some point or changing the board at some point. But right now, we kind of want to save that until we get back to in-person meetings. When that happens, though, we will be looking for a new treasurer. If anybody is interested in that, please reach out to me after the meeting, and I can chat with you about that. So our regular event schedule, we meet the second, third, and fourth Wednesday fairly regularly. This is the Gamedev meeting, which is on the second Wednesday. You can tune in the third Wednesday for the play test, where they test locally made games and kind of hang out and get to know each other there. This month, I don't know if Zach is in the Discord right now. The VR HCI meeting is actually going to be moved to the fifth Wednesday. Zach, are you around? No? Okay, well, if Zach shows up later, we will have him talk about that. That will be sort of a one-off outdoor in-person event that he will have details for later. Otherwise, if he doesn't come back, I will hit them after the meeting. We do like to promote the parent organization. IGDA is the International Game Developers Association. All the board members are members of IGDA. But we open our meetings to everybody, so you don't have to be a member to attend. But when you do register, if you become a member, let them know that we are your local chapter, because eventually, if we get a large enough membership base, we do get some benefits for having a membership. Plugs and announcements. I don't think we have the other plugs. So Mark, do you want to talk about our move?
Yeah. So we have been streaming our IGDATC meetings to Twitch for over a year, and it made a lot of sense when we set up and moved to online events. But I think we're considering moving to YouTube for our streams in the future. So if people have any thoughts about that, let us know. You can send us an email or get in touch with us. But the current plan is we're going to, at least for starting next month, we're going to start streaming directly to YouTube. And what's nice about that is we'll get some of the features that makes the most sense for an organization like us that isn't streaming games regularly, but actually has events that we need for archive viewing. And so we'll be able to focus our efforts on one platform instead of two, as we currently have to with the workflow that we have. So logistical reasons, in a lot of ways, the experience for the viewer should be pretty much the same. And so we're taking comments, but the plan now is starting next month for next month's Game Dev meeting. We're going to be streaming from YouTube. And if you follow the Eventbrite invites that we do every month, you'll see the details and the links on that. It'll be on our main page. And then, of course, our YouTube page is where you'll find that. So, again, just I'm being a little like hesitant on it because it's a rocky transition probably. So because I think we just figured out how to do it on Twitch, but we're gonna see if it works better for us on YouTube. So that's the current plan. Oh, look, it's another thing. Uh, so as many of you know, I co-host Nice Games Club with my pals Ellen and Steven. This is a little bit of a digest what we've been doing on the show this month. We did some talks about bonus content in video games, was really fun, and we also talked about giving talks. So if you've been looking to speak at this event in the future, or at events like GDC, which is taking submissions right now, you can have some advice and feedback. Is in that episode. We also talked to Dana Ware, who's a VR designer who designs games for location-based virtual reality. Really, really interesting conversation. We talked about pitching board games with fellow IDGA TC board member Peter Yang, and we also did a live episode at 2DCon where we did one of our nice games jams where we made a what we call chess 2 to the 4th degree. It's exactly as silly as it sounds, and it was a lot of fun. So you can check out all that, nicegames.club.
And I think I heard Zach come in to the Discord. Zach, do you want to chat about the meeting this month?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're doing something real different for MNVR and HCI this month. There's actually a different event, VR event, happening in town on our normal 4th Wednesday. So we're shifting to the 5th Wednesday, which is, let's see, the 29th. Did I get that right? And we're doing a little kind of collaboration with REM 5 to celebrate the launch of Space Pirate Trainer. Has a new expansion, which is an arena mode. And if you haven't heard anything about it, it's essentially running around outside in a 10 by 10 meter space, which is exactly half of a basketball court. So we're going to rent a kind of an outdoor pavilion space and make sure we have some shelter and light, and do that on the 29th. And it'll be kind of bring your own quest, and we'll have masks and everything so people can feel comfortable getting together even after the school year has started.
Awesome. And I think that is basically it for our intro slides, unless there's anybody trying to check the Twitch stream here. Give everybody a second to catch up. If there's any plugs left, we'll wait just one more minute. Nope. All right. I think we should switch over to our presenter then. Starting here. Yeah. All
Hello.
right. Thank you for coming. I'm going to let you take it away.
Thanks for having me. You just get my slides up. Can everyone see that? Right. So this is lessons from graphic design that help me be a better game developer. I'm Star St.Germain, and I'm the Chief Design Officer and co-founder of Aconite. And Aconite is a mixed reality storytelling company. We believe that the future of storytelling is deeply immersive and that people need more magic in their everyday lives. We tell stories that blur the line between reality and fiction. Last year, we came out with Hollow Vista. Hollow Vista is a social media simulator game. You play as Carmen, a young architect exploring a very strange house. In the game, you are finding and photographing hidden objects in virtual 3D scenes in 360 degrees, solving puzzles in an Instagram-esque social media feed, and reading text messages from engaging characters. Here are some of the environments from the game. This is our first game that we made as a studio, but more relevant to this talk, it's the first game that I ever made personally. And so how did I get into games, and where did I come from? A little bit about my background. So when I came out of college, I started working in illustration and comics, and I was very lucky in my time in the comics industry. I got to work for Marvel, I got to work for Image, and one of the books I was in even won an Eisner Award, which was really rad. But then it was 2008 and the economy tanked, and I had to branch out to find more work. So I started getting into doing more and more graphic design, which eventually led me to doing more and more branding. And in the process of doing a lot of branding, I started to make a great deal of style guides, which is going to be the meat of what I talk about with all of y'all tonight. So, why do you, a game developer, need a style guide? First, what is a style guide? According to Wikipedia, a style guide is a set of standards for the writing, formatting, and design of documents. Style guides include all the things that are in this list, but really they're quite flexible and you can put whatever you need in there. Specifically, what I'm advocating for is whatever you need to align your team to a shared vision. So some documents you might have used in game development that cover some of the things that are typically in a style guide are on this list here. I'm not advocating for you to stop using any of these documents, but these are all quite specific to particular disciplines and often are quite sprawling in nature. And what I'm suggesting is something that's a more general purpose document that should be valuable to every discipline on your team. So in preparing for this talk, I spoke to a bunch of different indie developers, and a lot of people do a step similar to this, but they do it like in the middle of development or later in development. And what I hope that you take from this talk is to try to start putting together a style guide as early on the timeline as possible, because it'll force you and your team to commit to decisions and test them and see if they work out. So how do you even approach starting to make a style guide? One of the easier things for people to wrap their head around are mood boards. So what is a mood board? A mood board is just a collection of images that help you get across a visual idea to your team. So you can use them for a lot of different things, but the reason you want to use them is that words alone are inadequate to describe a visual discipline. In my time in graphic design and branding, as well as my time in games, I found that you can save a lot of effort and time just pulling up some visual examples of the things you're trying to get across, rather than just trying to explain them using words, because words mean different things to different folks. I can't even tell you how many times my clients would use meaningless words to describe what they wanted. Like, it would be great if it looked clean. But I don't know what that means to them. So it's easier if there's a picture in play. So there's a lot of different things that you can use a mood board for, and I'm just going to quickly go through a list. One of those things is concept art. This is by no means a replacement for a concept artist, but by getting your team on the same page about what you think your game ought to look like, it can make your job bringing on a concept artist and articulating your vision to them so much easier. You can also use this for branding and typography. I'll spend quite a bit of time talking about typography later in this talk, so we'll move right along for now. You can use this for character design to start to get a vibe for what qualities you want your characters to have, or you can use it for environment art. And just to really quickly show how this might get applied in a real-world situation, here's one of the environments from Hollow Vista. This is the Venus bar and the mood board that accompanied it. And you can kind of see the direct relationship between the mood that we pulled in pre-production and the final level that shipped in the game. So, moving forward, choosing typefaces for games. One of the things that will touch the most places in your development cycle visually is your typeface choice, because that'll appear not only throughout your game, but throughout your marketing materials and any supporting things that you may have around your release. So there's a lot of ways to choose typefaces, and since this talk is aimed at small teams who maybe don't have a graphic designer on staff or can't afford to bring one on, this is a more simple approach for beginners. So This is just one way to do it. There's plenty of ways that you can try, so don't take this as gospel. So in order to show you the process, I'm going to show you a mini style guide for this very presentation. It's the type that I have been using throughout. And what you're going to choose are 3 typefaces and no more than 3. As soon as you get more than 3 typefaces into your style guide, you're risking complicating things more than is necessary. So that's for advanced use. Stick to 3 or less. And the 3 types of typefaces you're going to pick are the display, title, and body text. So I'll walk you through those real quick. Display typefaces are meant to be used at large sizes for headings rather than for extended passages of body text. Display type is often more eccentric with variable design rather than the simple restrained typefaces typically used for body text. So a display typeface is something in a video game that you're going to use perhaps for your logo or word mark. You might use it for a game over screen or any large size headings that might appear in your game. It really ought to be stuff that only gets displayed over a certain point size, and you should have that point size in mind depending on how ornate or crazy your display face turns out to be. The next typeface that you're going to be choosing is the title typeface. Titles will support the display typeface and should not draw too much attention away from it. It'll also be presented at a smaller size. For this reason, titles are typically less ornate than the display type. So in games, like these are the sorts of things that often your UI will be set in, your subtitles or smaller headers, anything that is smaller than the size that you would normally use your display face for. And usually this is quite a workhorse in games. So you really want something that's very clear and easy to work with and won't clash with other typefaces. Then your last typeface choice is going to be what you use for your body text, which is best chosen with legibility in mind. It'll usually have less personality than your average display typeface. If the text is going to be used for long-form prose, take extra care in laying it out to encourage clarity in distracted moments. So of all your typefaces, this is the one that ought to be the most legible because it's going to need to handle the longest array of text. A game that this will get used most for things like dialogue or things like journal entry or in-game books, anything like that. How do you go about choosing these typefaces? Well, you're going to use the same process that we sort of went over in the mood board section, which is to say, gather examples of type which embody important qualities of your game. My recommendation to you is to start with the display typeface, and I'll tell you why. So the display type should reflect the unique personality of your game. And because it's the one that's being shown at the largest size, it has the most leeway to be the most crazy of all of your typefaces. So this is where you really want to pack in like something that will show off what your game is about. And I'll give you some examples from games you should be familiar with. So Grand Theft Auto is set in their display face is priced down by typodermic. And in this case, they use it in their wordmark logo. They also use it in their game over screens and all of their marketing materials. If you've seen this game, you've seen this typeface. And what I love about this choice of a display typeface is that it's straight ripped off from the Price is Right logo, which I think is super appropriate for a game about stealing things. The next one I'm going to show you is from Psychonauts 2. This is sort of a special case because Psychonauts 2 actually commissioned custom typefaces for their game from the awesome folks at Lettermatic. They actually wrote a whole blog post about the process of creating custom typefaces for this game, and the URL's at the bottom of the slide. I highly suggest you check it out if you're curious about that route. So they had even more control than you will with regards to making sure the type reflects the personality. Here they say, nothing in the world of Psychonauts is at right angles. Everything is slightly skewed. So the typeface is exactly that. Last example I'm going to go over is from Control. Control uses ITC Avant-Garde Gothic by ITC, which I think is a super appropriate typeface for this game, in that on its face, ITC Avant-Garde Gothic is a quite plain and functional typeface, but hidden within it are all of these interesting discretionary ligatures, like this NT ligature in the word mark that you see there. That kind of show a lurking set of style that is a little bit unusual beneath all the really functional type. The way they've styled it also is quite in line with the type of game that this is. Control is the first game that ever jump scared me with typography, and they did that by setting their titles extremely huge, taking up almost the entire screen, and accompanying it with some spooky noises. And I can't think of a better approach for a game that is so much about the supernatural, horror, and bureaucracy, and how those things intersect. So, with those examples in mind, at this point, you've hopefully chosen a display typeface that reflects some of the things that your game is about. And the next thing you're going to want to do is select supporting typefaces which contrast with the display type. So I'll give you a couple of examples of what that might look like. So in this case, you'll notice that the type on this web page at the top in the heading is quite different than the type that is below in the paragraph. You could never confuse them. Here's a few more examples. The contrast between what is used in the header and what is used in the subtitle and paragraph is obvious, but they still look like they're from the same world. So what you're trying to do is find pairings of different typefaces that look different enough from each other that it's obvious that there is a contrast, but not so different that they feel like they're from completely different worlds. Which brings us to type pairings. How do you approach creating these pairings, and what tools are available to help you do that? So there's a lot of different websites out there that'll help you pair type. This is one of them, FontJoy. It's an AI-driven font pairing website. And what it does is it generates a combination of different typefaces. And you'll note they use the sort of 3 typeface solution that I'm advocating for as well. And when you find one that you like, you can lock it, and it will suggest and curate other typefaces to pair with that. Which will keep in mind the rules like contrast that I went over previously. But that's not the only way to do this. There's also other approaches. I really like Fonts in Use, which is a website that documents how a typeface is used in a number of different ways. It's been running for quite some time, so there's a huge library of examples. And one of the other things I like about Fonts in Use is that the examples are quite broad. So some of them are websites, some of them are postcards, some of them are, in print magazines or signage. So the different pairings of type in a lot of different contexts are all available for you to look at. And in the process of looking at different pairings, you can kind of get a vibe for what you like to see together. Again, it's a quite massive database of these things. So if you've already chosen a display face, you might just type that in and see what other choices different designers have made for pairings as a way to get you started. One more of these websites is TypeWolf, which is quite good as well. They exclusively are going to be showing websites, so not as much breadth as something like Fonts in Use, but the curation on that site is also quite good. So some other things to keep in mind when choosing typefaces. Does it have enough styles? This is particularly important when you're choosing your supporting typefaces and not your display, because since your display is meant to be used at super large sizes, you can get away with having fewer styles, but your title font and your paragraph font are both going to need to be presented at a variety of sizes from quite small to quite large. So having a lot of different weights is really useful. I recommend having at least 4 weights. You can maybe get away with 3. Less than that isn't going to cut it. So make sure when you're picking to pick something that has probably 4 or more weights, so you have lots of flexibility with how you can use it in the future as you discover more and more use cases for those typefaces. So tabular figures for numbers. This is something that's a little bit nitpicky, but extra important for games. A quick side note before I get into this. Somewhere in the history of type design, someone decided to use the word figures when they could have used the much more accurate and easy to understand word numerals. So if you ever hear somebody talk about figures in typography, they're just talking about numbers. So tabular figures versus proportional figures. A proportional figure is a numeral with a width that is set based on its optical size. So every single number that you're seeing in a proportional figure situation is going to have a different width. Whereas tabular figures are all using the same width, which is really handy when you're doing things like calculating in a spreadsheet and you need all the numbers to line up. But in games, you're probably going to want tabular figures because you're trying to increment a number and animate it. And I want to quickly show you the difference between a tabular figure and a proportional one, which is to say it changes the width as it goes and moves the end of the line in a way that just looks pretty bad. So I highly recommend when you're picking a typeface for your numbers, you should make sure it either has tabular figures or that there's what's called a monospace version of that font. And a monospace font is basically a font where every character is tabular. So all of the letters are the same width. So pick one that has one of those two things. Last couple of things that you should focus on when you're choosing a typeface, and you should do this early rather than at the end, are localization and licensing. So have you ever seen something like this before? What you're seeing is a typeface that does not support the characters that it needs to display. And instead of displaying the characters, it displays this ugly box with an X in it. This is something that we typically call tofu in the type design worlds, named after the blocky food. It's also sometimes called not def, which is short for not defined. And this is bad. You just don't want to end up in a situation where your typeface is going to show the wrong thing. So how do you prevent that? When you're picking a typeface, there's a couple of different type websites that kind of help you with this problem. MyFonts is one of my favorites. The reason I'm recommending MyFonts is that they have a minimum character set when you try to upload a typeface to sell it on their website. This won't support every single character that you might need for every single language in the Latin character set, which is just what you think of as the English alphabet. But it will cover the vast majority of things, especially the popular things that you would be hoping to localize to. So generally speaking, if you've purchased your font from MyFonts, you'll be covered for your Latin character set. This, of course, does not apply to other character sets like Cyrillic, for example, and for that you're going to need to use a fallback or try to find a typeface that supports both. Trying to fit as many languages into your body typeface as possible is advised, but not necessary, because you're inevitably going to need to choose at least 1 or 2 fallbacks for some of the languages you're localizing into. It's very rare to have a one-size-fits-all solution. And the only one I'm familiar with that comes close is from Google Fonts. That typeface is called Noto, and that's short for no tofu. So Google's trying to solve this problem. You're asking yourself, Star, what if I'm localizing my game after it's finished? Or what if I've fallen in love with the typeface and I don't actually know if its characters are going to support the languages I need to localize to? Well, there's a resource for that called Wacom Fondue that I highly recommend. And it lets you just drag and drop any font file onto the website, and what it does is it exposes all the data contained within the font itself. So in the case of the display face I'm using in this deck, Yipes Regular, it shows that it has 234 characters and 236 glyphs, and it shows some of the languages that those glyphs might support. If you want to get real specific, it also shows you every single glyph that's inside of the font, which is useful when you are looking at a particular character list that you need to support. The last thing I'll bring up on this topic is that you need to check the license. And for Google Fonts, all of them have an open license, so those are fair game. But for something like My Fonts, you have to check the specific license. Most font seller websites that are going to have a license that you want to purchase for games are going to call it an app license. So that's usually the way it's going to be labeled for the thing you want, but definitely read it. The terms of how long the license applies are usually different from typeface to typeface. In this screenshot, this particular typeface is for 1 year. Sometimes it's for up to a certain number of views. And make sure you keep track of that as you're using your typeface, because you could find yourself in a situation where you ship with something that is licensed properly, but it eventually becomes in breach because you've reached the limit on whatever the terms were. So pay attention. So now that I've walked you through basically like how to put together a style guide, I just want to say a brief word about working with it. So the most important thing that you want to do is to validate your guide through real-world testing. So whatever's in your style guide, whichever of these things that you've chosen to include or things that are not on this list, as you're moving through development, you should be trying to find these real-world development situations in which to test your typeface choices or your logo choice or your color palettes as you're going, because this will teach you like what areas you still haven't yet defined in your style guide and allow you to build on it. So iterate when a solution doesn't work. And remember that whatever you're adding to or putting in your style guide, it's there in service of aligning the team to a shared vision. So in conclusion, remember these key points. Create a style guide and refer to it often. Make mood boards to convey visual ideas. Refine your typography throughout the process. Keep localization and licensing in mind when you're selecting a typeface. Actively apply solutions in the style guide to test them. And if what's in the guide isn't working, iterate on the guide. Thank you so much.
All right, so I'm back. I don't know if I'm actually back. So I'm going to wait a second for the stream to catch up, and then if we have any questions for Star, I'm going to try and forward them. Thank you so much for coming and for speaking with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
One question that I always have is your deck going to be available somewhere with all those nice links in it?
Yeah, I can export a PDF and drop it for y'all on the Discord if that makes sense.
Awesome.
Or I can just put it up online so that there's a URL. I'll do that.
Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions. So what I think we'll do is we'll take a short intermission, and if anybody does have questions, go ahead and drop them in the stream or pop them in the Discord, and we can always ask her later. Oh, there's one from David. What are some tools good for making mood boards?
Okay, so the most popular one and the one that I recommend is actually Pinterest. And the reason why I like Pinterest above some of the other tools is first, it's free. A lot of the other ones are not free. But second, it has a pretty robust algorithm at this point. So if you make a few choices on your mood board and you've got like 3 or 4 things on your board, you can hit the More Ideas tab and it will just serve you a whole bunch of other stuff that is usually in the same visual pocket. So I find that really useful. Um, there's a few other things that you can try if Pinterest is not your jam. If you just search for Pinterest competitors, all of them will come up. But honestly, Pinterest is the one I like to use.
Okay, and then we have one from Mark. Can you talk about color choice strategies when creating a style guide?
Yeah. So for color choice strategies, I would say start with 3. It's kind of similar to typography, where you want to have sort of a dark color, a light color, and a pop color. And if you pick those 3 first and sort of start using those initially, then you can build out what supporting colors you would want to add to those. Some other tips I have on that front: look at a color wheel when you're doing so. You want to understand like contrast and value and what that's going to look like with your color palette. Um, there's also a lot of other great tools that you can check out. Adobe Cooler is really excellent for helping you generate a color palette off of a couple of existing colors that you've already picked. It also has other features like allowing you to pull a color palette from a photo. So, if you've got a build of your game that you've started putting together, or a screenshot of your mood board, or any number of other graphical assets that you think represent some of what you're going for, you can just pull color from those as well.
Awesome. All right. I think we'll close it off now. So we'll take a 2-minute intermission in case anybody wants to go grab a snack or a drink or something like that. And we'll be back with Ashley at 10 after.
Thank you so much.
All right, welcome back, folks. We are going to move into our second presentation with Ashlye and opening your own door into the industry. Ashlye, you here?
Hello.
There we go.
Got
And
everything
I will
pulled up.
step out, so you are going.
All right. Well, hi everyone. I see a bunch of people in chat that I know. Welcome. Today we'll be talking about opening your own door to the industry, specifically the game industry, and how I really took that journey from going to university to getting here now. Now everyone's journey is going to be a little bit different, but you can at least see through the eyes of what I did, what might work for you. So let's get started real quick. So, a little introduction about myself. My name is Ashlye Kaczmarek. Online, I am also known as Ashlye Yuki, and that is also the name of my LLC. So, anytime you see me online, whether it be Twitter, social media, especially here on Twitch, I go by Ashlye Yuki. I'm 23 years old, and I have an unhealthy obsession with Lord of the Rings and World of Warcraft. And WoW is definitely what got me into game design and being in this industry. So, what I do now for a living, now that I am a full time game dev, is I'm a Twitch streamer, I'm a graphic designer and artist, and then a game designer and producer. My favorite quote that really kind of encompasses why I do what I do is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes is better than a master of one. And that really hits home for me, especially the fact that I get very bored if I stick to one thing. And I always want to kind of like dabble on things here and there and see what I can become good at, or what really gives me that good amount of dopamine. I have a lot of ADHD, and so it's really big for me to try out new things. So a little backstory on like my company and where we began. I started Ashlye Yuki Productions when I was like grade school, high school. Originally, it was a cosplay company where I would make costumes for my friends, for people in the convention circuit, and I would sell them to them. And that's how kind of like everything started. And the name Ashlye Yuki was the name given to me by one of my pen pals, because Ashuri in Japan, or Ashley in Japanese is Ashuri. And so it just kind of followed all the way up until now. And it's been my persona, business name, what you would call it. In 2018, I decided to go official and become an LLC. And that's not something that you have to do depending on what state you're in, but that's what I decided to do to make sure that I was being taken care of, tax wise, especially being a young business owner and making sure I was doing things properly. So after I ended like doing cosplay, I decided to keep the company but go into an art studio. And what I do for my art studio, which is still open to this day under the same name, is I take my own artwork and I turn it into merchandise that I sell at conventions. I help other artists and streamers get their branding together, get their merchandise made. And I do that all in the lovely studio that I have at my parents' house. Because if you can save money, do it. Keep your stuff at your parents' house as long as you can. It wasn't until recently that we became a game development studio, and that was in 2020 when I graduated from Bradley University. So, a little background to my experience. So, I graduated Bradley University, with a Bachelor of Science degree in game design with a minor in entrepreneurial innovation. And now I chose that particularly because I owned a small business and I didn't have time to really double major in business or entrepreneurial. So I chose it as a minor and then wanted to spend most of my time learning how to make games and the different ways to do that. So that took me into getting internships in the game industry, which taught me both about business owning and about game design. So my first internship that I had ever gotten was with Indiecade. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's essentially like E3, but for independent game developers. And I was their games manager intern. So any email that was sent out that year, any communication between developers. Pretty much all of like the paperwork, the production aspect of it was in my control, which really helped me solidify that I wanted to be a producer in the industry, and that like having that control and that organization. My second internship that year was with Change Lab. It was rather different and not what I thought it was going to be, but I needed an internship. So I looked on Indeed, and there was an internship up there for a game designer for a fundraising company. And it was paid. So I was like, okay, it's paid. $300 stipend. I'll take it. I just need something to do anyways. And I met up with them to see what this was about. And it was what they wanted to do was teach people how to fundraise properly. And we're not talking about, like fundraising for schools. We're talking about like big fundraising, and how to do that and get your um, large donators and going to find things properly without like making people upset. And so instead of just writing books on it or giving pamphlets or classes, they wanted to gamify it, which is one of the smartest things I've ever heard. And I think more people, including schools, should do that, is gamify your education, because that's going to make people want to do it. And so for a long time, I worked for them as their game designer. I entirely paper designed some of their tabletop levels, which was super, super, super fun. And then I also worked with them on the back end because they'd never gone to trade shows before. And that was one of my specialties at the time, especially working at anime conventions and Comic Cons, is I taught them how to have a booth presence, how to set it up, and how to get people interested in coming to see it. So I really got to help them as much as they helped me learn. Besides my internships, for a long time, I was a senior game assistant at GameStop. So I got to take my knowledge of game design and use that in the selling aspect of it. So I got to learn how to sell the games besides just making them. So I got a little bit of marketing experience there, including management experience. And then currently, I full time am a Twitch affiliate. So I stream on Twitch 3 times a week. And my awesome community is in chat today. So we talk about game design while playing horror games and different types of titles, and we pick apart like why are games made the way they are. If they have questions about this specific mechanic and why it's that way, we tend to break it down and go over it. So the start of my journey for why I decided to become part of my, like, opening up my own door and being self-employed, the journey really began when we went online in senior year due to COVID-19. And that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. And a lot of people here can agree that COVID wrecked all of us. So where I'm sitting right now in this chair with this webcam is where I got my bachelor's degree. I wasn't in a building. I got it sitting at this exact desk, looking at this exact webcam, turning in a project. And so we had to go online and deal with that. And because we graduated during the pandemic, we didn't get our last. We didn't get our last portfolio show. So I didn't get connections from it. I didn't get people to see my projects. This one hurts me. We're down deep. I didn't get my last band performance. And that one still sticks with me. The band performance, losing that. And just not having the school guiding me into figuring out what's the next step, because nobody knew what the next step was. We didn't know how long this was going to last. So I applied for an internship, and it looked like I was going to get it. This was going to be it. My door, my foot in the door, how I was going to live the rest of my life. And unfortunately, it got canceled due to COVID. They didn't see a reason for it to continue. Because of money, they didn't know how long this was going to last. Though it hurt and made me very mad, I do understand it to this day. Like, I get it. It was an almost impossible situation for them to be in. But that kicked me down pretty far. I didn't know what to do because that was going to be it. And I didn't really have, I had to put so much into that I didn't have anything on the back burner. So I asked myself, what's next? I applied to over 1,000 jobs and I've gotten denied from almost all of them. I received 3 interviews in total since 2020, and I was ghosted from all of them. Some of them I got up as high as like almost the owner of the company, and 7, 10 interviews later, and I'd never hear back. No, thank you for your time. No, I'm sorry, but we didn't choose you. Just nothing. One thing that really hit home with me, because I've been applying to be a producer, an assistant producer, was that I was told that encouraging my team and having group time was manipulation. And we'll go into a little bit of this later, but I've noticed that this is a problem, especially for females in the industry. And that's kind of why the industry is having a lot of trouble now. And we'll go into that too. Is when I am with my team, they call me mom, not by my choice. It's a joke to them. It's lovely. But I always remind them to drink water, take care of themselves. But instead of yelling at people to get their work done or being stern with them, I like to have fun activities or be like, okay, well, if we hit this milestone, we complete it and everything is solid, let's go to the bar or let's have a movie night. Let's do something. Incentivize them so they'll want to do it. And they told me that was manipulation. To reward my not my community, to reward my teammates was manipulation. And that hit down deep with me because I don't agree with them. But I'm assuming that's why they didn't want me, is because I choose to have a fun, wholesome environment rather than something harsh and crunch, because we don't believe in crunch here. I finally, after one of my interviews, I received a job offer with one of my best friends, Zach. He's also on our team. We received a job offer simultaneously. It ended up being a scam. LinkedIn had been hacked and over 500,000 resumes and applications had been sold to the black market. And unfortunately, both of ours were sold to the same person. And so we went through the process, and that was probably the last time I think I submitted a job application anywhere. Since then, it's been, why am I going to keep doing this if people don't think that I'm worth it? Why am I going to keep doing this if my application's going to be sold to the black market? Someone's going to offer me $90,000 for it to be fake. So that broke me into the, why am I doing this anymore? And I think a lot of us have hit that point, especially during this pandemic, is, what am I doing? Am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for somebody else? That hit me to the tipping point. I was working 30 hours a week at my local store called We Vinyl. Love that place to death. But on top of that, I was getting 3 declines a day, working nonstop on my game titled Lingering Legacy, also streaming on Twitch, and it was taking a mental toll. My community literally told me that you need to quit your job because it is killing you. They could tell I wasn't healthy. I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. It was horrible. It was time for a change. So I decided that full-time content creator and a game designer was the path that I wanted to go, but not in the traditional sense that I was originally planning. And then I decided afterwards I would publish Lingering Legacy under Shiriyuki Productions. So what Lingering Legacy is it is a third-person action adventure game that has definitely primitive fantasy themes. And it was handed to us in our senior year capstone project. And it was a game that previously existed under the name We Who Linger. And it was the previous year's capstone. It was brought to us by our teacher, and he said, all right, we have this game. It's a bit rough. Make it better. Do you want to learn in somebody else's code base? Which, especially if you're going into the industry and working under somebody else, is very, very important, because you're going to be thrown in most of the time halfway through a project or learning through what somebody else has already made and having to mimic it or make it work. So we said, yeah, we'll do it. So we took this game and all of its assets, we threw most of the game out and kept the art and turned it into what it is today. And it is available on Steam. And we got to launch it on the 13th, the 13th of August. And I'm so excited that my journey through deciding how I'm going to do this led to telling everybody that thought I couldn't do it that I can. Because throughout my time, it's being told, no, you can't do this. You can't open your own studio. You can't be a producer. You're a girl. You can't do all these things. You can't be a jack of all trades. I'm sorry to tell you, honey, but I did. And that's kind of the mindset that you have to have in this industry right now is the minute somebody tells you you can't do it anyways. What are they going to do about it? Just be sad. So next I have the trailer for Lingering Legacy. So I'm going to switch over real quick and pause it. All right, bear with me here.
The enemy ravages this land before you, murdering and pillaging. Your death shall serve a purpose. Embrace your legacy, champion. Now, my guardian, the work begins.
It's a shame you'll die as nothing but an ignorant slave.
You are my last hope.
So that is the trailer to our game Lingering Legacy. And to shout out someone in chat real quick, the male voice actor of our game is actually in chat. His name is the Reluctant Hermit, and without him, this game honestly wouldn't have gotten to where it is. It's because of his awesome community and his amazing voice that we were able to finish the game. So thank you so much for helping out and being here today as well. To get a little on the hot side of things, the current state of the game industry is definitely one reason why I decided to go indie. And this is nothing against anyone that is here. This is not a one-sided problem. It is an everybody problem in this industry. Unfortunately, it is a male-dominated industry, it's a problem, but it's not a problem. And I want to preface this now. This is nothing against anybody. It's not a problem that it is male-dominated. That's okay. There's a problem with how it is a male-dominated industry. And this is going to be coming from my personal experience. Because it's male-dominated industry, there is a lot of negative thoughts about when women try to join it. This spans from a very, very long history. And I think it's where a lot of my issues have come from trying to get in the door, so to speak. All of my interviews for the 3 or 4 that I actually obtained were all with men. So whether it be 10 interviews for one job, I never spoke to a single woman. And every single time I got asked, "You're a woman in the games industry. Why does that make you special? Why does that make you better than somebody else?" It doesn't. I'm just here to make games. I'm here for the same reason that you're here. We're here because we love video games. We love making a difference, and that's what we want to do. And I think that's why the industry is up in flames right now, is that people are finally pushing back, which is such a good thing. To take Blizzard Entertainment, for example, which hits home for me, as you guys know, World of Warcraft is my jam. But when the news came out about the sexual harassment, and all of the sexism in all these cases, I was so happy. I was heartbroken for the people, but I was happy that it was getting news because finally people are talking about it. Finally, people are talking about how the industry needs to change. And I was asked in an interview a couple weeks ago of why is this a good thing and where do you see this going? I told them we're going to have our own mini World War III in the games industry. It's not going to get better until it gets worse, and it's going to be nasty. But that's fine because it needs to happen. AAA studios need to be held accountable. Well, any studios need to be held accountable. Uh, but until that time comes, we have to keep fighting for it. There's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of originality, and aesthetics have been prioritized over functionality. There's a lot of things from the human relations point of view that need to be changed, but then also how we look at designing our games. We keep taking the same games, especially AAA companies, taking the same games over and over and over again and reskinning them a little bit, and just a little bit, and then pushing them out. And to call out Call of Duty. Now, I know people will argue with me on this, but this is my personal point of view as a designer. The game is 99.9% the same each time with either better improvements or a new story. They could have easily done what they did with World of Warcraft and keep it in one game and have an expansion on it. There was entirely no need for an entire separate game every single year costing the same amount. And we're seeing with indie studios that there's significantly more originality, and that's why you're seeing indie studios they've been popping off with creativity, and that's why they are coming up further than AAA. You're hearing more about indie studios right now than you are hearing about the next Call of Duty. And within my small circle, we talk about games frequently, and we didn't know there was even a new Call of Duty coming out because all these indie studios are popping off left and right with these amazing titles that are polished and great, whereas a AAA studio is dropping a game that is half-assed and most of the time very broken. And that's where they are choosing the aesthetic and having it look nice, or it be, hey, we know this makes a lot of money, over the fact that it needs to be functional. The fact that Bethesda is known for putting out a game that will work in 5 years is a problem. We should be shipping our titles working. Like, bugs here and there are fine. We can put out patches, that's no big deal. But the fact that the game won't be good for several years after paying $60 for it, that should not be a norm. And that's what is so great about being an indie, is we get the choice to change that. Now, seeing the current state of the industry and all these issues, it gave me the idea of what I want to do. Like, how do I want to change this? I want to be someone that has originality. I want to be able to be held accountable and keep my people accountable. I want my game to function. And that's why I decided really that I want to have an indie studio, is so that those things can be inside of a welcoming place to make games. And now, how to open your own door. This, as I said at the beginning, this will be different for every person. For me, it was, I went through a lot of bad stuff and said, it's time for a change. For other people, that could initially be their dream that, hey, I want to open an indie studio. Well, the first thing you need to do is take a step back and look at the industry, as we've done in the previous slide. Is this something that you want to go into right now? Or do you want to sit on the back burner and see where this is going? Do you want to jump out when everyone else is? Or do you want to see, okay, what should I do and what I should not do? You need to think, what are you going to get out of it? Because at the end of the day, if you're not making money or if you aren't happy with what you're doing, what is the end all point to it? Do you want to work for somebody else working on their ideas, not your own? Because if you don't, you'll get stuck. Whereas if you take the time to say, I have ideas and this is what I want to do without somebody else's input, then you can take your step back from working in the industry and decide to become the industry. That's what we decided to do at Ishirayuki Productions. Is we did not like the idea of giving someone our idea and letting them ruin it and not do exactly what we want. We wanted to take that and be like, we have control. And that was really important for a lot of our teammates, is letting them have their own voice on it and have it matter. When making the decision about being indie or being in a stable position, you need to do your research. Research. You need to know, is this the right thing for me? How can I be stable? Where is my benefits going to come from? There's a lot more to go into it, especially if you're going to be considered self-employed, whether you're going to be considered a part of a small team, contract work. There's different ways that you can do it, and it works differently per person. It depends on what your preference is. My biggest thing out of all of it when you're opening your own door and deciding to do this is you need to diversify your income. As you've seen on my previous slides, right now I'm a Twitch streamer. That's what I do most of my time. That's where the bulk of my income comes from. I run an Etsy shop for my art studio. I have brand deals with different brands through my Twitch channel. I also work at conventions. Having those different things makes you be able to do what you want for longer. Because if you do not diversify your income and your largest one goes away, then you are pretty much wiped out if you don't have other incomes. You want to grow your social media following. Now, I did that at the beginning so that I could get connections in the industry to help me get a job. But now I have them as friends, and they teach me things that they've learned and connect with me on different ways and introduce me to other people. Networking is such a big thing, and especially having it on social media, because once you finally decide to go live with your ideas, then you will be able to put it out there to an already large group of people, or at least a cultivated group that will probably push it on further and push it and share it and reshare it. So that way you will be able to go past just your group. I never thought when I was younger that social media would be such a big deal now, and literally the reason I have made all of my friends and all of my money since now. But now you pretty much can't do anything on the internet, especially be an indie studio almost, without it, because of these amazing opportunities like being here and presenting to you guys and getting this knowledge out there. Without your small cultivated group, you can't move forward. Streamers are your friends. I mean, we're streaming right now on Twitch. I've met the Reluctant Hermit through streaming. We don't even live on the same side of the country, and yet he's in my game. Connecting with those streamers made it so that I can have a voice actor in my game, and then they also wanted to stream the game. So you kind of make those friendships where they're willing to help you out, and you end up giving them content. And therefore, you grow a following based off of that. And then you can see from there, like if somebody streams your game and you're friends with them, you can be in their chat growing your community for your games or your company, and then be able to see, okay, what is wrong here? Is there any issues with this thing that I'm making, or is there any player feedback? Is there any community feedback? You're getting live feedback from people in the chat and then people that are streaming the game. And that is, to me, been the absolute best thing that I could ever have had. I learned so much about the issues in our game, Lingering Legacy, from just sitting down with people, hanging out, and watching them stream the game and being in their chats. And that's how we were able to get so many people to purchase the game or wishlist it or talk about it, is because we would take the time to be present with them. And I think that's also one of the best thing about being an indie studio is you can be present with people. And people think it's a gift. And it's really not. It's just us doing our due diligence. People freak out when you're like, oh my gosh, the lead dev is in chat. Whereas to us, it's like, oh, we just logged in. It's fine. It doesn't take any extra time, but it goes miles for the others. The biggest word of advice I think I have for today and every day in life is do not let anybody tell you you can't do something. I went through my entirety of college, like listening to people tell me no. So tell me, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't have an Etsy because XYZ or because you're a girl. Don't listen to them. Use that as your kickstand. The minute someone says you can't do that, do it out of spite. Spite in that situation will be such a flame to keep you going. And that's how I, to this day, have been able to do all the things that I want to do, is because people told me no, and I want to prove them wrong. And I know that can seem petty or childish, but it has been the one thing keeping me going to achieve every dream that I've set for myself. Spite is a powerful force, as Bat says in chat. You can either have it be something negative that weighs you down, or something that pushes your dreams forward. In my case, spite literally blew open my door to the industry because people told me no, so I said yes. And posting on social media, especially saying my story, even how I got the presentation here today, was I posted on LinkedIn. I said, I got declined from this, I got declined from that, I was ghosted here, I was ghosted there, but look at me now. None of you wanted me, and now I'm here. And because of that, I made connections. And that kind of brings it back to having your social media presence and being able to cultivate that in such a way that you meet people in the industry and amazing folks that are here today. So let me pause this real quick. This is a video that the Reluctant Hermit gave to me that has been pushing me and keeping me wanting to keep going. And it's a little funny video, but it really hits home. And every time I'm down or really need to pick up, this is what we play.
諦めんなよ。諦めんなお前。どうしてそこでやめるんだ、そこで。もう少し頑張ってみろよ。ダメ諦めたら周りのことを思うよ。応援してる人たちのことを思ってみろって。あともうちょっとのところなんだから。俺だってこのマイナス10度のところしじみが取れるって頑張ってんだよ。絶対やってみろ。必ず目標達成できる。だからこそ家がビバ。
It is super important in our industry to never give up. With it being such a hard place to get into, the best advice I have to opening up your door is to do your research and take your time. Reach out to people that you know who have done it and connect with people. Networking is the way to figuring out, is this the way you want to do things? And at this time, I am open for any questions. If anyone has anything, we can keep going about talking about different things. But that is, in general, that is my story about how we got here. And I hope that inspires you to open your own doors and kind of gives you an insight on how I did it. Shoot, I'm legally blind. Could transcript. I can post a link actually to it. If you would like to. It basically just says to never give up. But I am pretty hydrated, thank you. I made sure to have my water bottle with me because I knew you would be asking me to hydrate. What was it like inheriting a game and making it your own? So with inheriting my own game, I'll post, we'll go to this screen so you guys can see my face. We'll have a chatting screen. So inheriting my own, or inheriting the game and then working on it, it was very difficult. I'm not gonna lie. We were handed the game, and half of the coding didn't work. It was really, really janky. It had a base there with no story. So we wanted to take the time and really delve deep into it. We had our programmer physically print out the code, and they went through it with a pen, writing down what each line meant in each code because none of it was commented. So she had to do that. And then once we figured out what we could keep, we had to throw out everything else. And this went on for 2 years of throwing things out, restructuring things, making new assets, reaching out to people, and a lot of talks with the old team, which we did credit the old team in the credits of our game because their work was equally important, even if a lot of it didn't get kept. And even the name Lingering Legacy was a tribute to them because they this is technically their legacy and it still lingers. So that's kind of how we came up with the name. We learned a lot through not having specific files and not having the capability to do certain things because of what was handed to us, and having to learn how to hire on different people that were from the school. We hired all students from our school so that they could get experience. And it ended up working out in the best because we learned how, one, to comment code, and two, for programmers that don't know, or for people that aren't programmers and don't know anything about programmers, learned how to go into someone else's code and find the problems without a single lick of commenting. Thank you so much. Sorry if I butcher your name. Rati? Thank you. Awesome, Savage. Oh, spite was a big part of this process from the start. Yeah, spite was a very big process from the start. It was being told no, or being told you can't do something, and being able to do it in the end. Even the game, we were told we were not allowed to publish it. The school tried to tell me after that many years of working on it that we didn't have the rights to the game. And if we wanted to publish it, we'd have to pay them. I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. And it took a very long time of fighting with them to get the rights to it and to be able to publish it. So my schools, it sort of covered LLCs. There was like a chapter on it. I learned more about LLCs before I even started school. I had, when I decided I wanted to be an LLC, I had no information about it. I asked my dad a couple of questions. Other than that, I just kind of dove into the internet and read everything that I could about it. And that's what geared me to take that as a minor. But they did have classes that really told you step by step, okay, you need to come up with your idea, you need to come up with this, you need to come up with that. But I didn't agree with a lot of it because the way they came about entrepreneurial was you have to have this idea for a life-changing product that solves a problem, and then you make an LLC, which I didn't really agree with that. Like, I understand where they're going with it, but that's not what we were trying to do. Is there any other awesome questions from all the cool people here? Would you recommend an LLC over an S corp? So that really depends on what state you're in, because there's different pluses to having an LLC in Illinois over an S corp. For example, in Illinois, LLCs are pass-through companies. So say I get sued, it gets sent directly to the company instead of me being sued, but yet all the funds and the taxes come through to me. So that's at least how it's handled in Illinois. But that could be different depending on other states. So you'd have to check with your state representatives and see their different files. Noticing some objects, a child particle system that are deleting the particle system when they are deleted until the last particle dies. That is an in-depth question. And fun fact, I had nothing to do with those pieces in our game. I actually designed all of the UI and worked on story and then produced them. So I get you.
I think Lane might be trolling you.
I mean, probably. I appreciate trolls, though. Unity 3D. That's actually, we did make our game in Unity 3D. I will be learning Unreal Engine next, hopefully, because Unity is a little rough around the edges to work with sometimes. That's true. And that's, I kind of wish that, like Unreal and other engines, that you couldn't tell what it's made out of just by like how it works. Make sure to pull up chat so I can see.
I think
I
that's
think we're good.
probably it. I think Lane's just going to keep trolling if we keep going.
I mean, if he wants to keep trolling, I'm here for it. I'll fire right back.
Well, that's okay, because he will probably be in the voice chat to troll you there if you're willing to join us for a little while. So that wraps up our meeting. Thank you both for presenting. We're going to move the discussion into the chat rooms on the Discord. I guess that's it for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Yay!